Hey, are we live yet? I think we're live. Hey, well, hello, coders. So glad you made it back. So today I think is January 22nd, and we're talking about very broad topic. Then we're going to break down in its relative components, billing. So this is an area that is on the flip side of the coin from coding, but is somewhat more critical to life medical practice and medical organizations, since financial matters ensure the ability to continue to function. So I brought on three others that will have a better understanding and be able to show the highly technical side of billing a lot better than I can. So, in my understanding, billing is an administrative process that covers a wide range of different functions. So, biller must be able to have a broad understanding of the administrative concepts, such as insurance and uh, legal cases, as well as clinical concepts for all types of providers. There's many different roles as well as different aspects of billing that private companies form just to handle the workload. But we're going to go over the overview of it. So tonight we have three panelists. We have Melinda Manwiller, who is a medical biller for Doctors Urgent Care LLC, and she'll be discussing her daily routine as a production biller. Jennifer Wheeler from Health Track RX will be discussing her role and her expectations for productivity and skill set from her perspective as the Director of Revenue Cycle Management. Vanessa Moldovan, applause, who is let me get this right, the Commercial Incentive Insight Investigational In-Person Introspective Person at Waystar. I told you I would butcher that, and you can do that again when you have to. But she's also the creator of the For the Love of Revenue Cycle podcast, and is one of the top experts and consultants in medical billing and revenue cycle management. And she's going to be talking about more about advancements, skill set requirements, and how to improve yourself in the field of billing. Take it away, ladies. So let's start with what revenue cycle management entails and what are the primary responsibilities of a biller. Go.
Okay, so I'll take it. For revenue cycle management in healthcare, really involves managing the financial processes associated, like with medical billing. That includes identifying and managing the collections of patient service revenue. Primary responsibilities, I would say, of a biller start with patient registration and insurance verification. They carry through to charge capture, charge entry, claim submission, payment posting, denial management, and then accounts receivable follow up, as well as reporting. All of these tasks ensure that healthcare providers are compensated for the services in a timely and accurate manner. So, Vanessa, what's your approach on that one?
Yeah. Well, something that kind of stood out to me with this question was the idea of responsibilities of a biller. And I think one thing that I often do whenever we get into this conversation about billers is making sure we're on the same page about the title biller. I don't know if any of you have ever been out there and you've looked on LinkedIn or you've looked on Indeed and you're like medical biller and you come up with 5 different roles, right? That have, I have managed people, their title was medical biller and they did A to Z, except for the coding, right? They did the payment posting, they did the AR follow-up, they did everything. So I think for the sake of today's conversation, to make sure, we're all on the same page, I think when saying biller, to me, this means someone who reviews charges, enters charges, reviews the charges after they've been scrubbed, makes those corrections, creates a claims batch, submits it in the clearinghouse, does the reconciliation, corrects the rejections inside the clearinghouse, gets the claims fully submitted to the payer, reconciles all of that. And at that point, moves on to someone else. However, that can be widened and it can be different. So, and that's one of the great things about our role and what we do is it's never in a box, right? So even though we're using this term biller, it can be a lot of things. And a coder can be a biller, right? A biller can work denial, management. But those are kind of, when I think of maybe what you might call a traditional biller, that those are their responsibilities. And as a side note, since we're talking about coders, some in particular, and kind of making that switch, which a lot of them do, or like Jennifer and I and Melinda, we all hold a CPC, right? I've never been a traditional coder, but I certainly use that knowledge in what I do, right, all the time. And we were all saying that earlier. Coding knowledge adds so much to a successful biller, so much. And I recommend everyone if you're going to be biller, also have your coding. If you're going to have coding, also have your billing, because it gives you just so much more depth to what you do.
Oh, I agree. That absolutely. I don't use my coding certification every day, but I certainly do use it on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So what are some of the overlaps that you would see that a person that is a biller would have to like take on some kind of coding responsibility, or vice versa? Like in what situation would a coder have to learn some billing? Like what is that like kind of overlay? Because I know there's sometimes you have to be able to do both. Like what are some of the
I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is denial management. So it's always in the denial management where coding comes in for a biller, and vice versa. Billing knowledge comes in for a coder, because if they're trying to work together to manage denials, that coding certification is certainly helpful to that biller, because she knows what she's looking at as far as coding and how they're assigned. And then the same on the opposite side, the biller is having that coding knowledge. They know how to, see that denial and say, this should have been coded this way versus how it was coded, or maybe it was a modifier issue. There's a modifier missing, or something, or it may lead them to a payer policy, which would also come with the coding knowledge.
Well, and if I'm able to, I like to put somebody with a coding certification reviewing claims in the claims reviews and the rejections, because a lot of those rejections, to resolve them, if it's an NCCI edit or review of a modifier, missing modifier, an ICD-10 format, something like that, having somebody in that chair who doesn't have to pass it on to a coder to get it resolved is much more efficient. I don't know about you, Melinda, but I just feel like there's no wrong answer if you have both a CPD and a CPC.
Well, for me, like I've only worked in private practices, so I've done it all. I've done the coding and billing, so you have to know it all. I've done the claim from birth. I call it from birth to death, from the patient's been seen till all the way to the end of the payment, whether I have to work the denial or just, bill the patient for the copay if it wasn't collected. So I've had to do with auditing of the chart. Claim, bill the claim, check the clearinghouse, process the payment. If it's denied, work the denial. So you have to know both the coding and the billing to do like a private practice kind of setting.
Yeah. I mean, I would say it's not necessarily required, but it certainly makes you better.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
So if being able to work those two roles as a coder and a biller, they work hand in hand. Are there any instances where being a coder and being a biller causes conflicts with like what you have to do? So like, sometimes you have to like make compromise with like, okay, so I got to look at this wearing the hat of a biller, not the hat of a coder. Like, what are some situations where that might be an issue?
Well, I think the conflict actually occurs when you don't have both sides of that coin. If you've only been a CPC, only had the CPC, only been a coder, it doesn't give you that other perspective, because they are married. There's no way you can get away from payers, and there's no way you can get away from coding guidelines. So they are together. And so the advantage that having, and not necessarily like every coder has to be a biller, but I just think knowing the biller's responsibility, knowing what they're thinking is their responsibility, like Jennifer was saying with denials, right? Their responsibility is to resolve a denial, reverse it, get the revenue in the door. A coder, their main concern is coding it correctly, right? So what oftentimes happens is there's this, this misalignment and it's just their priorities. I mean, it's just, and there's nothing wrong with that, because it's true. Payers make challenges when it comes to coding guidelines. So just having that perspective helps a little bit with like the teamwork and the empathy and understanding. So when the biller is like, can you just put a modifier 25 on there? And the coder is like, but it doesn't follow the guidelines, right? We're laughing because we've all been there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. This modifier will bypass that NCCI edit. It's not correct.
Yeah.
I've always called,
no, I have an ethic I have to follow. I can't do it.
Yes.
I used to work for this one practice, and I used to get a little sarcastic in my early days. Like, I would pull a magic wand out, and I would do like, okay, so you want me to do the modifier 25 incantation? Yeah, we just magically add that on for you.
Yes, Harry Potter. Didn't you know he was a coder?
Yeah, so like it's like the the magic spell that makes all your financial problems go away.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's not and now I'm I use it a little less often, but I used to throw that out all the time.
And there is a
So
balance. There is a balance. So,
Mhm.
for sure.
For sure.
all right, so I know Melinda touched on this unique way of describing revenue cycle as birth and death. So let's start with like, can we go through like what the birthing process is to the death process, like step by step? Because for the whole revenue cycle, there's a lot of steps, and I know that some people might not be aware of like how that process goes.
Yeah, well, yeah, and sometimes it's called the life of a claim, right? So we go back again to birth and death there as well. I also think too that there are different iterations of that. You can add a lot of detail into it. You can make it kind of general. So I'm just going to give my opinion. You guys definitely add to what you do. So when I teach revenue cycle, it starts with the appointment being made, and the reason why I start there, and actually, to be honest, when I teach it, I start all the way at credentialing and enrollment, because frankly, no one's getting paid unless that's done. Doesn't matter. You can make
Amen.
25,000 appointments. No one's getting paid, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
100%.
100%.
Exactly. So we're not going to see any money come in the door, which is the whole reason of learning about revenue cycle. But it's appointment. Then you do all of your prepayment work, so your prior authorizations, your your eligibility after that appointment is made, and then the patient is seen, and at the time of service, you're collecting payment from the patient. So there's all those front desk responsibilities. Sometimes happen at the front desk, sometimes happen before the patient comes in. Then the patient is seen. Then we have our coding. Well, our providers do their thing, right? Then we have our coders verify or code straight from the record. Then we have our charges. They're either being captured or they're being entered. Then we have claim review. There's scrubbers going on and batches and clearinghouses and all of that. Then we have the payer. Payer adjudicates. And then you have the payment, and it can either the payment response, right? So our ERA or EOB could be a denial as the response, could be a payment response. And, then the next step is you work it till resolution, right? Till we have some type of resolution. And if there's patient responsibility, collecting from the patient. And that's our death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys, please tell me your point of view.
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, so I think you got it. I'm in a little bit different space, so because I'm in the lab space, so we don't see the patient directly. So our revenue cycle, which this will kind of give you, there's a couple of different variations of what revenue cycle is, because obviously with the physician office or the hospital, it starts with a patient, but for us, it starts with an order from a physician. So that is created from that encounter with the physician, whether it's at a hospital or at a physician office. And so when that order is kind of where our revenue cycle starts, when that order is processed from the physician and then goes through our lab processes and the samples actually processed, then we go through all the same other processes of patient insurance verification and all the scrubbers that things go through with claims and all of that stuff. But our patient encounter doesn't happen until the insurance adjudicates and we send the patient a bill. And so then obviously the patient gets a bill and they're going, "Who are you?" So that's kind of how that happens, right? And they're and then we get the phone call into our call center from that patient saying, "Hey, where did you come from?" That kind of stuff. So same indicator, just a little bit different version of how that happens. So I think it depends on what space you're in. Ancillary service certainly has a little bit different view of that cycle.
All right, so let's break down daily routine. So this is mainly for Melinda and Jennifer. Like, what do you typically do during a day? Like, do you have a set routine, or do you have to handle things as they come in? Like, what is your day like as a person in your role?
So I can say, as a director of revenue cycle, my day is a blend. It's a blend of strategic planning, hands-on management of our revenue cycle processes. A typical day for me might be reviewing financial reports, like analyzing daily, weekly, monthly reports, trying to monitor KPI, revenue trends. a little bit of team leadership in that, meeting with my team to discuss projects, address challenges, maybe provide some guidance or oversight to a biller coder, depending on what's going on. Always process improvement, so identifying areas of efficiency where we need to improve our processes, implementing strategies, always 100% monitoring for compliance, looking at relevant laws, regulations, payer contracts, how all that interacts with what we do on a daily basis. Collaboration with other departments, our clinical teams, IT teams, administrative, trying to align the revenue cycle processes to the overall organizational goals. Problem solving is a never ending in rev cycle, significant issues with billing or compliance concerns, system malfunctions, dealing with customer concerns, etc. And then always just as a leader, professional development, staying informed about industry trends, regulatory changes, things that will impact our operation on a daily basis that come from, different industry or regulatory changes.
And Jennifer, are there surprises, or is everything the same every day?
Absolutely. There's a surprise every day. It's never boring. Each day brings its own set of challenges and opportunities. So making the role, extremely dynamic and integral. So
I know I always laugh a little bit when people are like, can you do a presentation a day in the life of a biller? I was like, do you have a year? I mean, I was like, there's like, oh, it's like this,
Yes, every day.
Yeah.
Every day. New changes.
For me, it's a little different, obviously. I mean, as a production biller, but in the position I'm in now, I mainly focus on payments and denials, unlike an actual straight on biller. So, I mean, first thing I do is I work all the electronic payments we receive, process them, work any denials that we receive off of that, post any copays that are applied to that from the patients, go from there. And then I get packets of payments that come in the mail. And then I also have to go out to Availity, PaySpan, OptumPay, and Sunshine, pull any payments from there, print them out, post all payments, work any denials, bill any patients that need to be billed, do any appeals that I need to write. But you have to have this is going to go to one of the other questions you have. You have to have a set schedule. Tuesday is Blue Cross, Wednesday is Ambetter and Sunshine, Thursday is, because if you don't have a set schedule, something's going to get missed. So you have to, know what you're working on, of course, and, certain day for statements, a certain day for, you have to send refund checks to patients, you have to have just a very set schedule. Now, the job I had before this, I did all of it. So then, you checked patients for the day before, make sure they had no balances for when they came in, verify their insurance, make sure they had coverage, make sure you had the correct copay. So the patients, so the front desk would know what to collect, or if they didn't have insurance, to make sure you got the correct insurance. So it's a little different depending on which type of practice you're in and exactly what you're doing.
So, but I think all of that you've said really leads to one thing, and that's attention to details. So I think
detail.
I think that's probably the most important piece in revenue cycle, whether you're a coder or a biller. Paying close attention to detail is probably the strongest characteristic that you could have.
Yeah, that goes to the other question.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say that leads into it, but you also touched on a few things, Jennifer, where it really led into the characteristics of a biller, or frankly, in my opinion, anyone who works within the revenue cycle, whether you're a coder, biller, payment poster, is, in my opinion, it's far more important than the skills that you walk in the door with. Because that can change for the specialty, the size of the organization, the system you're working in, those things can change. But being able to handle change in general, right? Being a problem solver, a critical thinker, being attention to detail, caring about that detail, right? Follow through, being able to create your own day, like you were saying. And I love how you said that, because what's helpful about having some type of structure is that it helps things to not fall through the cracks.
Exactly.
Right. Because of course you're going to have, you have to pivot some days,
Oh, yeah.
Right. But going in with some type of structure helps so that, that the things don't fall through the cracks.
Yeah.
You have your checklist of
it's a mental
downloading the
checklist.
ERA and exactly.
It's like you walk in the day today. Oh, today's Blue Cross Day.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of. I mean, I don't know a lot about other professions, honestly, but I feel like something unique to this field is that those soft skills are more important than the hard skills because it is complex. There's nothing standard about it. So you have to be a self-learner, constantly learning, willing to learn all the time. And if you get a different job, different position, you're going to be learning. I mean, just like we were joking with Jennifer, every day you're going to learn something
Absolutely. Absolutely.
100%.
Ever-changing field, ever-changing.
Well, and I try to tell my staff all the time is attitude is 100% of everything. If you have the right attitude, I can teach you anything.
Yep.
So if you go into this field and have the right attitude and get the right mentorship, you can learn. I mean, the sky's the limit. So, just be a sponge, absorb everything that anybody that can give you, take the initiative to stay up to date on the things that are affecting your area, whether it's coding or billing or insurance policies, just stay informed about regulations, develop strong communication skills, whether it's communicating with your coworkers, the insurance companies or providers or whatever it is, and then cultivate that problem solving and be able to investigate, resolve issues. And then back to that focus on detail, stay focused on your accuracy and your detail. And that's really the things to me, in my opinion, as a director that leads a significant staff, that will make you successful as you go into a new billing role.
And I also think that for your own, like you brought up professional development and self-development, career development, I think an important aspect of that is, and something that I tell my students is, as they're going for the CPB exam, right, is be open to the idea that maybe that isn't the best role for you, especially those who are breaking into it 100%, right? And I've had people who started out like, I'm going to be a biller, I'm going to be a biller. And then they get the package, right, the CPB and the CPC, and they get to the CPC, they're like, I'm going to be a coder. Like, I mean, they were so for sure they were going to be a biller. Then they got to the coding, they're like, nope, that's for me. And sometimes the opposite. But then also I've had people who've just tried the profession out and they're like, this is not for me. There's too much change, right? It's too political. It's, whatever. I think it's important to stay open to that it just may not be a right fit, because right fit is essential. Having the right person in that seat is so essential for their success. There's so much that can go wrong in the revenue cycle. And every day we're, as you were saying, Jennifer, the process improvement, constantly filling in the gaps. Where can we make it better? Where can we make it more efficient? And we make it better. We make it more efficient by making sure the right person is in. And that's only good for them too, right? Is to have to have a person doing really what's a good fit for them. And something that I think is wonderful about this profession, has kept me in it for so long, is, we don't do it to make $1 gazillion, right? We do it because we love it. We love it.
I do.
Right?
I do. It's
right?
so fulfilling.
Somebody's doing it, and they're just like, it's kind of like, nah. It's like, maybe it's not the right role, because to sustain you is the love of it, right?
Absolutely. I think I've always stuck by, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. So just love what you do.
Yeah, it's true.
Love what you do. And you'll love to go to work every day, and you'll love to do what you do.
Such a meme, but it's so true.
It's true. It's true.
I want to say that you said the M word, and that's the one that drove me out of billing, the math part. Nothing. I usually, when I first started, I was working in a small clinic, and I did all that, and nothing ruins your day than being off by 1 penny.
Oh God!
37-page Medicaid plan, and then you have to track down where you misplaced 1 penny.
See, but to me, that's what drives me, because it's when I find that 1 penny and then the success of that. I am a numbers girl, so finding that 1 penny is so much self-satisfaction.
It is. I totally it is.
I love it.
I would say I love data. I mean, I'm a huge data nerd, and when I was a revenue cycle manager, I ran through data. That was the only way that I could make decisions. But I'm not a fan of reconciliation either, John. The penny, being off a penny, drives me insane. Or you're reconciling your claims batches and there's one claim you can't find. I mean, that is like, I don't have the patience for that. It is satisfying when you find it, but I'm gonna pass it off to somebody else. For my own mental health, I'm just like, it's been 6 hours. I can't find that penny. It's going to somebody else.
But see, that's where the satisfaction comes in, because in this industry, there's people that love every part of it.
Yeah.
And so you just find your part of it that you love, and then you surround yourself with it. So everybody finds their niche. And that's the cool thing about it is there's so many different niches, because there's a lot of things that maybe you do, Vanessa, every day that I would be like, oh, I can't do that, like the same.
Yeah. And when I was reading through these questions, that was one of the things that came to my mind was, kind of with putting the right person in the right seat, is there are a lot of different personalities that run a revenue cycle, right? A certain personality type that posts payments all day long, $5 million of payments, and that's all they do, right? And they love it. It fits them really well. And a coder who sits heads down in an operative node and with their coding book, and they love that. And then there's the other one, it's the front desk, talking with people and very outgoing and external. And, so there is a fit for so many different types of individuals, but there are those aspects that are never going to change, like all of the change, if that isn't part of your, of your personality, your comfort zone, probably not a great field for you.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I mean. Like, everybody finds their niche, because, I have a vast array of different types of employees or personalities, and they, as a manager, it's my job to find where they fit best and like what works for them best. So sometimes it means, they might start in cash and then they're good at it, but they would be so much better somewhere else, because something that they could be a little bit more outgoing. And so that is kind of a job as a director, is to find where people excel, and not only just for themselves, but it helps the company when they're excelling for themselves. And self growth is also company growth. It's the ability for us to utilize the people that we have and their skill sets to make things better, process improvement, or whatever it is. So that's part of management, is just learning that strategy and being able to move people where they may not think they work best, but they really do when you see how it works out. In the end, it does.
All right, so you did touch on, for a large facility, like for a large group, that you have a lot of different roles. So what are some kind of what are some roles that you might have ads out for? Like when you see, any job posting, what are some things that coders could look for in an ad that would, signify this is this is a role for a biller? Like, what are some titles that are out there, like you've seen floating around?
I don't recommend searching for titles, because there isn't a standard title. Coder is one that tends to stay coder. But when it comes to anything outside of coding, I mean, even payment posting gets called, AP and, all these different things. So I recommend to people when they're out looking for a job, or even for myself, to search those keywords. So, like if it's important to you that they require a CPC, to just type in CPC, whatever comes up for, CPC. The other thing too that I recommend is to network. Always network, right? In this industry, just network. It will do wonders for your career. And then when you find somebody who's like, they are who I want to be when I grow up, ask them where they worked, who they worked for, who got them there, what their titles were, what was in their job descriptions. And then it'll help you with those keywords to search for, to pull up what you want to do. And then the other piece of advice I always give that has done me wonders in my personal career is to never limit yourself, ever. Don't look at a job description and say, oh, I have a 2-year degree instead of a 4-year degree, or I only have 2 of those certifications and they want 4, or there's something in the job description that I know I'm not fit for, or I'm not interested in. Like, if there is just 20% of that role or the organization that you're slightly interested in, have a conversation, contact them, do more research, whatever, have an interview. One of my mantras my whole entire career is I never say no. Somebody reaches out, they want to have a conversation. I never say no, at least to the first conversation. And it has changed my life. Saying yes to people that initially I was like, you look like a creeper, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's LinkedIn, right? I mean, you're not going to find me. But
it goes back to that leads back to 100% of the attitude, though. If that person has the right attitude, like I can train them. So, and you're going to always miss 100% of the shots you never take. So if you don't ever step out of your comfort zone and take the shot and have the right attitude about it, you're going to get it. If you want that director role, you want that manager role, you want that biller role, that coder role, step out of your comfort zone and take the shot, because you're going to miss 100% of the shots you never take the chance to take.
And that's what's great about this industry too, is like we were saying, there's so many different things that you can do in it, and you can try them all. Start out with a billing company that has that works with 15 different systems, 50 different specialties. You can try everything and anything, and like, okay, I love dermatology, that's what I want to do, or I want to be an AR the rest of my life. I mean, I think that's one of the great things. It's not like once you graduate brain surgery school, you have to be a brain surgeon forever because you paid $500,000 to do it. It's something you can try different things and move into different roles and say yes and say no. And it's great.
Anything you want to add, Melinda?
No, actually, they covered pretty much all of it. They're very good.
Sorry, we're talkers.
That's all right. You actually inspired me as well, so it's been great.
He put two talkers on the same panel. That was
not. Sounds like rethinking his interview process.
No, I love this. I love the fact that you guys can work off each other's answers. So I'm gonna try to focus on one more from Melinda, so I get her on here as well. So as a coder, I know we have a lot of tools that we have our EMR, we have our encoder, we have coding books. What are some things you use daily in your role besides coding references that like you need to get through your day? Like, what are some of the tools that you have to use that anybody that wants to learn billing or wants to do billing is going to have to know how to use?
I mean, obviously they need to know how to use the billing system. And I find like any billing system you can learn. Once you learn one, you can transfer to another one. It's just giving you time to learn it. But once you learn one, they're all pretty much the same idea. I think the important thing is also knowing how to use a clearinghouse and, working rejections and things like that. Knowing how to use insurance websites, especially like Availity is used a lot. And, like United Healthcare and those kind of websites, understanding those kind of things. Knowing how to read like a verification from insurance company is really important. Another thing I find that people struggle with is understanding the differences between insurances. It's like they don't know what a Medicare or Medicare Advantage is, Medicaid or a managed Medicaid is, or, with the motor vehicles and the workers' comps and all those things. So it's understanding the differences between insurances is really important because there's so many for people to understand.
HMO.
Yeah, and whether or not they have a copay, not take a copay, or if it's a dual advantage, and don't take that copay because it's going to get processed another time. Don't take that copay. It says there's a copay on there, so it's just understanding the differences of the insurances that's important. But I do use my coding books a lot when I do work the denials because it's denied for that code, but why? So you go into that book, you look at the note, you try and figure out what's going on. And that's another important thing as being a biller. You're kind of like a detective, like who, what, when, where, why, but that's the fun part too. You get to explore things and investigate things. And then once you win that battle, it's like, yay, my coworker and I will yell to each other, we won, we got this one. So that success is also fun.
Those checks start coming in. It's like, almost like it's your own money. You're like, yeah.
I'm actually an insurance company, but we're winning. So
I think that the MACs are really helpful. The Medicare Administrative Contractors, those websites, I find them to be, they have such a wealth of information in them. And then also find a favorite website that just has great resources. I mean, I think the APC website has amazing resources.
Yes.
Has that insurance payer, website. I love their Codify personally. Lots of resources there. But then also the American societies. So especially if you work in a specialty, So learn to love your, if you're in dermatology, American Dermatology Association, and even as a biller, whether you're a biller or a coder, lots of those associations have such great guidance on billing and coding to, again, help solve why the heck did they deny it?
Yeah.
How are we supposed to properly
Right.
code
Like, how am I going to fight this one?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, like Vanessa said, the governmental resources are great for guidelines. Also, make sure you use your online forums. I mean, AAPC has great online forums. I know as an officer, we work hard to keep those forums up and to help support, especially the new coders. There's tons of workshops. I mean, I know as a chapter, we do a monthly meeting, but almost everywhere across America, you can find an AAPC chapter that's doing some kind of monthly education. Get in, take it. It's free education. We're offering it for you. There's online courses, web courses like Coursera, Udemy, LinkedIn offers learning, like free LinkedIn learning courses. Like, take advantage of it. Your industry publications, Becker Hospital Review, I use on a regular basis. Modern Health is also a good way to keep up with industry stuff. And find a mentor. Find somebody, like Vanessa said, that you want to be when you grow up, and bug the heck out of them. Let them mentor you.
I definitely agree with the continuing the education. Go to conferences if you can. Go online, do the learning, because it is constantly changing. I mean, for me, I've always worked in specialties, so I'm always seeing repetitive, codes, repetitive diagnosis. You're in your sleep, doing it like it's the same thing over and over again. But once in a while, they throw a curveball and like, oh, okay, so you kind of have to know the changes and things. But like if you're in a bigger company or like primary care or something like that, then there's a little more variety in things.
If only
Or
somebody
they just got to make a change.
if only somebody did a podcast related to revenue cycle.
That's crazy.
Is
Someone
it not?
should do that. That's a great idea, John. I'll take it up with my manager. But you know what? All joking aside, that's what inspired me. I mean, there were so many people reaching out. Look, I mean, I've been doing this 25 years, and I had to look for resources myself. I started before the internet existed, so it was like anybody who could give a resource. I was, was hogging resources as much as possible. There isn't standardization in the education. We're getting there. We're slowly getting there, but it's still not really standardized. So you just take it where you can get it, and that's where I was emphasizing networking. But that's what inspired the podcast. Was I was like, you know what? I've gathered all this resources, all of this information, and I just want to disseminate it so that, other people can use it and be successful and in their roles as well. Because I know how it is when you every day is a different day, and you're like, okay, I got to answer that question. Where am I going to go to find it? And so, like Jennifer was saying, find your person, find a couple people. There's lots of Facebook groups out there. Some are not that great, but some are really great. So definitely vet your sources as well. I think that's important, making sure you have a good resource. But once you find that person, it's so true, Jennifer, about annoying them, because I mean, I have somebody that when I found her, I was like, I'm so sorry, but I'm going to annoy you. And she was so kind, to be so gracious. But but it is so much of our success is networking, and it can feel really scary and intimidating. And I have those people that I'm like, wow, and I hesitate reaching out. But I have found in this industry, pretty much everybody says yes. 99.9% of the time, they say yes. I will help you. I will help to guide you and help you be successful.
I think that most all of us who've been in the industry back to the time before there was electronic EHR and all that stuff, because I'll date myself and tell you I started when we were on the pegboard, and so when we used to do the old pegboard and have to calculate on a calculator at the end of the day of
I
seeing all the
started when
patients.
HIPAA went into effect. So
I was before HIPAA.
I was before HIPAA too.
Yeah, so I'm about 30 plus years in, so I won't tell you all that. But anyway, back in the pegboard days, so we didn't have resources, honestly. But so I feel like anybody who's starting out today is already at an advantage to what we started out at, because the internet is, bountiful with resources. And then there are all these platforms and forums that, you know,
Mhm.
I couldn't have reached out to a Vanessa back in the day. I would have had to run into her at a conference when we
Mhm.
didn't even have conferences like you guys have today.
Mhm.
And so, you know, it was very hard to find mentorship. Today, it's really freely available. And I feel like any of us who've been in the industry that long are more than, you know,
Mhm.
happy to help new people coming in,
Mhm.
you know, mentor you, guide
Mhm.
you know, answer your questions about coding or
Mhm.
anything like that. I know all the AEPC officers, that's some of the stuff that we do
Yeah.
is mentor, you know, new coders or even, you know, people wanting to take a certification, you know, try to
Mhm.
help you pass the test.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yep. So can I ask a question? I'm so sorry, my podcaster's coming out. Um, just out of curiosity, which is not my middle name, but so what do you think, John, in your experience, Melinda, you're a coder as well, you do coding as well too. What do you think is sometimes a hesitation for a coder when they're like, that kind of looks interesting, but I kind of don't understand it. The billers pick on me all the time. They want me to change modifiers and stuff like that. I kind of want to go over there, but what are some of those hesitations of maybe learning it or branching out or that even leads to a conversation like this to make it a little bit easier? What are some of
Then I'll
those?
never go back.
Oh,
I'm afraid that like if I step
well,
foot outside the coding, they'll like lock the door. Like like
interesting.
I'm gone. And they like change the locks and like I'm done. Um
I
I'm
love
afraid
it.
of I'm afraid of that. And not only that, I'm afraid that like if I do step in a role,
Mhm.
I'm gonna show my weakness because honestly,
Oh,
mathematics,
yeah.
and not math not math in general, but accounting. Accounting is
Mhm.
where I got tripped up. Like
Mhm.
I really like when if you were like that one thing I said earlier about the about the trying to find the one penny. That's
Mhm.
happened more times than I
Mhm.
like to admit. And
Mhm.
like I'm like, I don't even know where to begin. Like I don't
Mhm.
there's so and I would say as a coder, I have a deep understanding of the technical aspects of coding. When you try to explain, the financial aspect of it, sometimes it doesn't click, and
Mm.
that's the hard part. Like my mindset is clinical, but
Mm.
when you have a
Mhm.
different kind of technical, I struggle because my
Mhm.
mindset for years has been, anatomical, and we have very rigid rules, and there's also very rigid rules with billing, but they're
Mhm.
ones that I'm not that well versed in.
Mhm. Mhm.
And like I said, if I was ever to like switch teams, I'm afraid that like, oh, here comes the coder, and look at him
That's funny.
I love it. I love it.
Great.
staggering right into
He
our
knows
office.
what we do.
For me,
That's interesting. I've never thought of revenue cycle as accounting at all. Like I've never used those two terms. So it's interesting. That was your experience, was very accounting and reconciliation side. I think of it so process oriented. It is just processes to me and filling in the gaps of the processes. So that's really fascinating. I would be afraid too if it was all numbers. But
And
yeah.
see, to me, it's the opposite. I'm a numbers person, so
Me
I
too.
think of
I
revenue
like
cycle
numbers.
as very much a numbers game. So
Uh-huh.
very much,
Interesting.
how does this code tie to a dollar? You know, what's the
Mhm.
Yeah.
revenue per sample on that? Or, you
Mhm.
know, like just how does this tie together from a numbers perspective? You know, what is the end game of this?
Mhm.
So it's neat to see the different perspectives of
Yeah,
Yeah.
that.
for sure.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
still like the private practice of it because I like seeing all of it. I like having my hands in the coding of it. I like
Mhm.
having my hands in the money part of it. And I like being able to do the problem solving part of it. So I get
Mhm.
a piece of every little parts of that pie, and I
Mhm.
find it very exciting. So it's hard
Mhm.
to ever have to give up those portions.
Well,
Yes. Yeah.
and that's unique that you say that because I started in a private practice, so I was very much involved in all of it and then
Mhm.
have grown to a very large industry. And it's very hard for me today okay, I have to stay in just my operational role. I'm not
Right.
over here, I'm not over there,
Right.
like stay in your operational role. So it is very different going from a small practice to a very large operation where you have to share tasks.
Yes.
And so you have to
Mhm.
learn to to teamwork and pass things off. It is very different. So
Yeah.
you have to learn
Yeah,
where your
yeah,
lane.
no, it's and I like I do enjoy the payment posting part of it and doing the, knowing the adjustments, looking at the EOB and be like, oh, wait a second, that's not right. And you notice the patterns and you're like, you catch things and everything. It's all about, once again, the detail, you notice the patterns. But I also enjoy, like, you sending out a claim, you can look at it and be like, wait a second, that's not a Blue Cross ID, that's a Humana ID. Like you know things by heart. You just memorize like what IDs are supposed to look like, so you can make sure a clean claim is sent out before you even get to that whole process of having to get that denial and resend it out and slow things down. So I don't know, there's just so much fun parts about all of it. I don't want to give any of it up.
Well, and I have found when, much of my career has been in process improvement. So finding where are the gaps, right? And filling in those gaps and fixing what's broken. And what's interesting is that the margin of mistakes actually increases when you have people who are siloed. They just do payment posting, they just do charge entry, they just do the errors are actually more because there isn't as much ownership in the entire process, or lack of education of the entire process. So they don't really understand the impact of entering the wrong ID number.
Yes.
Right. They don't truly understand it because they don't have to fix it. Or, they're like, I don't have to fix it. I never see the downstream effect of what I do. So when I've reviewed, billing, the revenue cycle processes where they have one person assigned what we call quote unquote A to Z, much less error in there because they own and they have responsibility. They don't want to have to call the insurance company down here. So they're going to make sure up here that clean claim went out. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And it's funny because like you do talk to the front staff and be like, oh, I noticed you have a pattern of putting the ID in wrong. And they're like, like they don't understand how that it affects us over here,
Yeah, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's also a difference in volume. So you're probably in a small practice. You see a couple hundred patients, or whatever. And so then you look at something like where I'm at, where we do 100,000 claims or more a month.
Yeah.
So it's, then you have to look at scalability. So like what is scalable? So it's perfect in a private practice to have that birth to graveyard, but it's not scalable in 100,000 claims.
And I understand that.
Yeah. When you talk about the different roles, like how John was talking from the beginning, and like you're a coder and or you're a biller, you want to do different things in the industry. Definitely looking at, what type of organization, how big is it, right? How small is it? Because the scope of what you do is going to be very different. What you're going to be able to be involved in, what you're going to be able to get your fingers in, and different things you can try is dependent on how big it is. And so that's definitely something to take into consideration, because some people enjoy being one in a huge cog, right? Like you want, and then some people like you're like, nope, just give me, from, birth to death. And I want to do it all and see it all in a smaller environment. So I think that's important to take into consideration as you're looking at your career.
Yes, absolutely. What exactly are you looking for? Absolutely.
For sure. Yeah. Cause it's very, very different.
Oh yeah.
Very different.
I've tried the larger company and I just wasn't as satisfied. So
yeah. And I don't particularly like smaller practices because I don't like being in all of the other drama. I just want to do the revenue cycle. Like the patients and the clinicians and the whole practice, being in all of that is not something that I enjoy very much. So I like to be kind of more separated from it. And plus I crave variety. So I do much better either with a lot of volume or with, many different specialties in my hand in different things. But that's what's great about it, is it fits everybody's, different characteristics. Yeah, for sure.
Plus, I enjoy, like you said, the patients. I enjoy the interaction with the patients. I enjoy those phone calls sometimes. Like I enjoy those phone calls and dealing with them and explaining. Like you get the elderly, they don't understand that. No, it's not Medicare. You have a managed Medicare, and they're like, oh, and like, yes, you do have a copay, but wait a second, why? You have to explain. And it's nice being able to help people out like that. So I enjoy that.
For sure. And I would say sometimes, and Jennifer, you could probably agree with this, when we are in those bigger environments, we forget there's a patient attached to that number. Right?
Yeah. You have to remind yourself every day that it's not, it's very patient oriented.
Yes. That's what we're here for, is the patient.
So let's put on the HR hat, and this is where I'm going to ask both Jennifer and Vanessa. So, what are some red flags you would see in the candidate that you're absolutely like, no, the application gets filed away in the no pile? But what are some things you look for in, like, what are some positive things you look for in applicants, like people that are like have skills? Like, what do you look for?
I'll let
So
you go
I'm
first,
gonna
Jennifer.
Sure. So yeah. So I want to say like red flags would be people that don't pay attention to detail. So even on a resume, um, the attention to detail on your resume speaks volumes for you. So make sure things are spelled correctly, that your punctuation is correct, that your resume is adequately presenting you, because all of those things are signs to a manager as I'm reviewing resumes that attention to detail. If you've got a lot of misspelled words, then you're probably going to have a lot of miscoded claims. I'm just, being real with you. So those are things I look for. People that are resistant to change or not willing to learn new things. People that have poor communication skills. If I reach out to you and try to get an interview with you and I've called you more than twice and you don't call me back, I'm probably not going to waste a third call. Just being honest with you, because if you're not going to communicate with me and you're looking for a job, you're probably not going to communicate with me in a remote environment in which I work. I need people that are going to communicate and communicate effectively. So, ethical, anything that indicates they're going to have some ethical shortcuts or not doing things properly. In an interview, maybe some red flags might come up where they show signs of inability to handle constructive feedback. Questions that are asked that indicate that they are not good with constructive criticism. Because in order to be good, you have to be moldable. You have to be able to be constructively criticized. I get constructive criticism on a daily basis, and it's okay. It's how I grow. So that's important. Positive things I say I look for, a strong work ethic. What's your work ethic? When you speak of your previous opportunities that you've been in, were you excited about what you did there? Did you have a strong dedication or sense of responsibility towards what you did? I don't care if you worked at Walmart. If you were excited about it and you can tell me the good you brought to that job, if it was Walmart, Brahms, I don't care. As long as you show that you had a strong work ethic there. Again, it's all about attitude. What kind of attitude do you have? Do you have a good team player attitude? Do you continue to bring out in the interview process about how you had this teammate there that couldn't get along with you, or that you hated going to work because of them? Then that brings to me that you don't have a good team player attitude. And so we want to look for a team player attitudes, because obviously we have to work with teams. We have coworkers that we have to deal with. Adaptability, flexibility. Are you, as we've all said all night, healthcare is changing all the time. So you have to be, flexible and adaptable. You have to be a continuous learner, someone that's willing to, constantly be learning regulations, changes, new skills, new EMRs. Like I said, when I started, we were on paper, and then the next thing you know, we had, HIPAA, and we had, ICD-9, ICD-10. Like, there's always stuff changing, and so new things coming out. We just have to be continuous learners, um, problem solver, critical thinker, positive mindset with that positive attitude, and then someone who's going to always be ethical and compliant. So I think, that's pretty much around. But when I'm looking at resumes, those are the kind of things I look for when I'm interviewing. That's kind of what I look for. But attitude always being number one, because I can teach you anything as long as you have the right attitude.
Yeah, I agree with so much that you said. And when it comes to a resume itself, one of the things that I always think of, especially nowadays, is you have the power of Google. You could have Googled, even if you've never wrote a resume ever in your life or ever went to an interview, and you Google, what should I say in an interview, or what should I put on my resume? Indeed is going to come up there first, and they're going to tell you what you should put on there. You know what I mean? So, spelling errors and great punctuation and that kind of stuff. It's like that, and that shows me that you're putting that effort into it. So straight just looking at a resume, when it comes to I definitely look at the cleanliness stuff, what you were saying. When it comes to skills, I am different sometimes than other people that I've known, where I don't look too much at skills. Or even certifications, or if it's there, it's great. Unless a coder, obviously you have to have at least the CPC. But as far as background and experience, I think there's something to be said for someone walking in with 15 years of experience and someone walking with zero. Is the zero is eager to learn, is open to hearing suggestions. Sometimes the one with 15 years of experience is like, I know, I've done that. You don't need to tell me to, not open to change, right? Sometimes, it's not all the time, but so there's pros and cons to both. So I don't ever make like a blanket, they have to have so many years of experience, because like exactly what Jennifer was saying, I think that it's in the soft skills, it's in the personality, it's in their attitude, it's in their eagerness, their adaptability, all those things that you said. And all the other stuff is kind of, icing on the cake, if you know the billing system. And I love you said that, Melinda, because I've always said, especially when EMRs started coming, into practice, and they would, well, do you have Epic experience, or do you have Meditech, or do you have? And I was like, listen, they all do the same 15 things. I just got to find the button. That's
exactly.
It. Some do it really great, some do it not so great, but they all have to bill a claim. They all
right.
have, so if you're going to judge me just because I don't know Epic, well, this is a you problem. So I don't hold that too high. But I'm looking exactly at what Jennifer's saying. I'm just looking for, literally, there was one, I love telling this story. She's one of my biggest success stories. Is I hired somebody that, on her resume, she had no experience. And at that point, I was just, whoever sent in a resume, as long as it looked good, I was interviewing them. And going off of her resume, I should not have hired her. Skill and, that. But because I just am like, there's a lot that you can't tell from a resume. You got to meet the person and look them in the eye, And I literally hired her based on the eagerness and the joy in her eyes of the idea of this opportunity and what she wanted to do with it and her dreams for her future. I mean, and I could tell there were these light bulbs behind there. I mean, I could just tell. And I hired her more than 10 years ago. She has, risen up in the ranks, and she started out as a biller, no experience, risen up in the ranks. And so I just think there's a lot to be said just beyond the skills. And this is good for also people breaking into the industry. Just remember that, even though they say 1 year experience preferred, right? Look, you need to market yourself as being a hard worker, having that ethic, the ethics, wanting to learn, those kinds of things. So.
Yeah, 100%. I probably have, half a dozen of those same stories where I've hired people just purely based on their attitude. Or I had, internal staff that was wanting to promote, and they just had the right attitude, and they didn't know anything about where they were trying to go to, but they had the attitude and the aptitude to get to where they wanted to go. And so we were able to promote them, train them, teach them, and mentor them into something bigger and better than what they started out as. So it's 100%, your eagerness to want to learn and in the attitude to get there.
Yeah. Agreed. Yay.
So you mentioned that there are tiers in these roles. So let's talk advancement. Once you're in one of these roles, it's not something that you're going to be in the same position for 40 or 50 years. Like
not if you want to.
There's upward mobility if that option is if you want and you have that drive. So let's talk advancement. Let's talk job security. So what are some of the things that a person that wants to secure the ability to advance and the ability to hold on to a job, what are some of the things that they consistently need to do in their performance?
So I think that, every revenue cycle has KPIs that they adhere to. So every company is different. So obviously, sticking with your KPIs and knowing what they are and meeting those is always the number one. Having the right attitude and always being willing to learn and conform is one of those things. The attention to detail, you can't get away from that. That's something that, in every billing, coding, revenue cycle role, attention to detail is probably what's going to set you out from the difference, because the more attention to detail you are, the more you're going to set yourself out, because you're going to have less errors, less issues, and your work's going to be just cleaner and easier to work behind. Um, Analytical skills, nowadays, we're analyzing data like never before, because it's at our fingertips. I mean, we have so many ways to analyze data today. So I think, picking up some analytical skills is always a way to advance your career, because analytics is, the wave these days, and it's not going away.
Mm-hmm.
Being technical savvy, like everyone said, I think EHRs are EHRs, doesn't matter which one you do, but just being technical savvy and being able to pick up an EHR and learn where the button is in this one versus that one
Mm-hmm.
is always good, because you never know when you're going to go from one billing software to another. I mean, I'm currently in a billing conversion right now, so we're going from one software to another. So we're having to learn where the button is here versus the button there, and they all do the same thing, but they all have, one or two stronger suites over the other, and so being able to analyze that and being technologically savvy, um, and adaptable, because inevitably we're going to have change. That's just it's going to happen regardless.
The best advice anybody ever gave me was that to advance, you need to currently work on where you want to be. So it doesn't happen where somebody knocks at you're 21, you just got your CPB, and someone knocks on the door, is like, can you run my lab that has 100,000 claims a day? Right? It doesn't happen that way. It's, I want to one day be a director of revenue cycle in a large organization. How do I prepare myself that so when the opportunity approaches, I am ready for that? And that drives appropriate decisions. And so when the opportunities come to keep advancing and to keep learning and trying new things, you have that long-term goal of, this is where I eventually want to be. So when the when the opportunity, that one opportunity that I've been waiting for, comes knocking, I can say, yep, I'm absolutely prepared for it. So I think, and with this, what I have learned over the years, it's just incredible, is it can be so easy to think that it is one path, and it's not. It really isn't. It can be very easy to just be heads down in what you're doing and end up being there for 40 years, like you were saying, John. And if you don't want to be there for 40 years, you do not have to. Keeping your eyes open, keeping your opportunities open, saying yes, showing up to things, even when you're at an AAPC, a local chapter meeting, and you hear someone speak and you're like, I like that. I want to do that. Or someone asks a question, it's like, that person sounds interesting. I want to get to know them. That's how we move around in all of the available roles. I think that there are traditional roles, in answer to your question, John, like there's, coding educators, there's in those types of roles, you're educating the providers, or you even educate within the organization. There's auditors, there's coders who review documentation. There's coders who code, straight from the medical record. In billing, I mean, I could go on and on about the different roles in billing, but I don't think, I mean, there's kind of traditional, but I think what's really great, what I've seen just happen over the last 10 years, is there's so much that isn't traditional anymore. And we're individuals like us who have knowledge of what people are finally starting to recognize is very complex. And maybe we should have people on staff who really understand it. And so we're being noticed and appreciated in a way that hasn't happened. And, I saw in the beginning of my career, we were kind of forgotten, and not really respected. And now we're sought after. Like Jennifer was saying, the data is so important like never before. People have, staffing shortages everywhere. So they're trying to streamline, be more efficient. Knowledge is becoming, really important. So I just think, the opportunities are limitless, but you have to have the right attitude and mindset in order to be able to reach out and take those opportunities, or stay in the same place for 40 years. If that's what makes you happy, do it.
Right. Absolutely.
All right, so we've been here about an hour talking about the full world of billing. Any last comments, ladies, about some final advice, or do you want to talk about some unnamed podcasts that could provide more insight into the billing that you got today?
Yeah.
I'm gonna let Melinda go. I feel like I have just been talking way too much, so I'm just gonna be quiet.
I mean, for me, billing has always been a passion for me. I've been doing this, goodness, for over 20 years. And like I said, again, like I just enjoy doing like the smaller practice and having that success at the end. Sometimes, yes, denials can be difficult. Sometimes it can be tedious, but if you just keep at it and you do that hard work, it's so worth it in the end. And I just love those successes that I get. So if you like that feeling and you want to do that work, then it's worthwhile. But you have to be willing to do that work.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Jennifer?
Say, like I said earlier, love what you do, and you won't ever work a day in your life. So, I love to get up and do what I do every day. I love the challenge. I love my staff. So if any of y'all are watching, no, I'm just, no, I do. I do love my staff. But just love what you do. Love love what you do, and really embrace it. Having the right attitude, the right mindset, you can go anywhere that you want to go. I certainly didn't get where I'm at today by sitting at the same job for 40 years and waiting on someone to just notice me. So that's the thing is, just like Vanessa said, you have to get out there, put yourself out there. You're going to strike out 100 chances that you never take. So you've got to take the chance. Of course, you're going to strike out sometimes, but continue to take the chance, because as you continue to take the chance, someone will take heed, and then your mindset will get you where you need to go.
Absolutely. I would say my last words is just my biggest just recommendation to anybody is networking. Reach out to people, make friends, meet people, get interested. Just learn as much as you can from the people around you who are in the industry. There's so much opportunity with this big bad internet and all of the connections that we have, and now post pandemic, and we do things like this, which was never done before. Just take advantage of that. And I mean, literally the sky is the limit. But it's a big, small world, this revenue cycle and this, billing, and meeting people will change the trajectory of your career.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank you all for coming and joining us today. And again, I'd like to thank our panelists. We have Jennifer Wheeler, who is the director of revenue cycle at Health Track RX, as well as the vice president of the AAPC Dallas chapter. So I believe they have a group on Facebook where they can find them on Facebook, or you can reach out to her on LinkedIn. We have Melissa Manwiller, who is the medical billing specialist at Doctors Urgent Care LLC, and I believe you want to reach out to her. She's also on LinkedIn. That's where I found her. And we have who else we have? Oh, we have Vanessa Moldavan, and her true job title, which I butchered earlier, is the Commercial Enablement and Insight Program Manager at Waystar. And she's also the creator of the For the Love of Revenue Cycle podcast, which has been on and off for about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, almost 3 years now. Yes, it will be on full time soon. But yes, I had to take a break. But yes.
But there are.
Yeah, there's 2 full seasons of 2 full seasons that are out there. Yeah. We're still out there, and a Facebook group which is full of over 3,000 members of people in this industry. So please join and network there.
So again, thank you guys. Clap it up for the people that joined us today. And if you have any questions, these are some fine, upstanding, knowledgeable billers and people in the revenue cycle. And I use the term biller to equate to revenue cycle because it's a huge field. It's about as large as coding. There's different roles, capabilities that places need. And, our role in coding and billing is the lifeblood of a practice. Without us, they don't survive. So there's always an influx of these new roles. And if you see them, don't be afraid to try them out, to apply, test yourself to see if it's right for you. And that's why we have this podcast, to kind of give you a preview of what it's like. But next week, we're going to take that a little further. We're going to talk about foot in the door jobs. So we have one person on who's an expert in practice management, Pam Vanderbilt. Next week, we have a recruiter with renowned talent, Mr. Bertram Landesquat. And we have Andrea Pernikoff, who is a brand new CPCA who just landed an outpatient coder role. So we're going to be talking about the ways new coders can kind of break into the business, and what are some things that managers look for, as well as people that do recruiting for these roles. Like, get some more on that. So join us next week for that. But again, I'd like to thank our panelists, and if they want to hang out afterwards, we'll wrap it up, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks.